startup entities valuation, and we all are aware as to how significant or important it is for every one of us to be aware of the intricacies involved in case of valuation of startup entities for many reasons as are well known to every one of us. What I plan to do today in this session, uh, this is the agenda that we have for today's session, friends. We will be starting with demystifying the valuation conundrum, then understand what is startup entity and why startup entity ecosystem is significant for the entire economy of the country, types of startup and some of the prominent startup that we have had in this country in the past, uh, peculiarities of startup entities, why valuation of a startup entity is difficult and challenging. We all understand as valuation professional that when it comes to the evaluation of a startup entity, there are many challenges as to what those challenges are and how to overcome those challenges. What is purpose for valuation of startup entity? Types of valuation required in case of startup entities. What are the different uh, stages of funding in case of startups? Who are the people who do the funding of startup entities? What are the principal approaches and methods for valuation of startup entities? And then, of course, we talk about the specific methods for valuation of startup entities. Then, of course, there are few intricacies that we need to understand, and this we keep reading. Every one of us keep reading in Economic Times, Financial Express, Business Standard, Business Line, and so many magazines that the valuation of startup entities increase at every subsequent stage. Now, why does it happen that the valuation of a startup entity keeps increasing at every subsequent stage of funding? That is what we will understand. Then, how should be the discounting factor and the expected rate of return since inception and why? Uh, Thereafter, we would look at which is the ideal method for startup valuation and why. I mean, this is the question which I am sure is there in the minds of everyone कि कौन सा ऐसा तरीका हो सकता है जिसकी वजह से स्टार्टअप का वैल्यूएशन अगर हम करते हैं तो वो एकदम सही होगा और it would be really a fair valuation. So which that method is, that is what we will understand. Then of course how to figure out whether a method really gives a fair value. तो कैसे मालूम पड़ेगा हमको कि कौन सा मेथड है जो कि वाकई में स्टार्टअप एंटिटी का फेयर वैल्यूएशन देता है. एंड फाइनली ऑफ कोर्स फ्रेंड्स, every one of us as valuation professional have a very significant role to play in supporting the startup entities in bringing out their companies, their products, their technologies. What role we can play as valuation professional, that is what we will cover. And finally, of course, we will have little bit some time left for the question answers, and this is how we will go about this session. So let us quickly understand the valuation conundrum. So the first thing that we need to understand, what is value? Simple. Value is utility of an asset, and that is value. So what is value? Value is utility of an asset. If an asset has a value, it has a if an asset has a utility, it has a value. If the asset has no utility, that asset has no value. So that is the simple definition of value. Utility of an asset is value. What is valuation? Valuation is quantifying utility of an asset in money terms is valuation. Quantifying utility of an asset in terms of money is valuation. And why do we do valuation? Why do we do the quantification of value of an asset? We do quantification of value of an asset because we have to take a decision. So it is for the purpose of taking a decision that we need to do the valuation. We need to do the valuation. What we find through valuation, तो हम valuation के थ्रू क्या find करने की कोशिश करते हैं, और ये एक $1,000,000 क्वेश्चन है और उसका आंसर ये है कि through the process of valuation we try and find out the fair value. the fair value. So the whole objective, the whole purpose of valuation exercise is not to find a price, is not to find value. It is to find fair value. And why it is to find fair value? Because somebody has to take a decision, and unless and until he is presented with fair value, the decision that he will take is going to be wrong. And that is what we need to remember, and that is what do we try to find out through the process of valuation, and that is we try and find out what the fair value is. And what the fair value is, an answer of course is very simple. Fair value is something which is fair to all concerned parties, all stakeholders, and that is the fair value. That means value which is not going to be unjust or to a particular stakeholder or particular stakeholders in on account of a biased or advantage in favor of someone, and that is your fair value. So what is a startup entity? Startup entity of course is very simple. Startup entity is an entity. Remember, in principle every new business is a startup entity. Every new business, छोटा हो बड़ा हो मीडियम साइज का हो, कोई सा भी बिजनेस जब भी शुरू होता है, it is a startup entity. But in the context of the valuation profession and the current economic scenario, the definition of startup entity is an entity or a business enterprise which is going to make the system, the economic system, more efficient, more effective with the use of technology, and whereby the inefficiencies from the system are going to be removed, and the whole system is going to be made more efficient. Now that is how we understand in today's term as to what a startup entity is. And but please remember, every new business that is started is a startup entity. But from the perspective of valuation, from the perspective of current economic scenario, startup entity would mean any new business with the use of technology which is going to remove the inefficiency from the system, make the system more efficient, make the life of the people much easier, much faster, much quicker, and that is what is a startup entity. What is the significance of startup entity ecosystem for the entire country? तो आज हम देखते हैं कि पूरी हिंदुस्तान में, right from our prime minister to everyone, every businessman is talking in terms of the startup ecosystem. Now, what is the significance of startup ecosystem? Friends, it's very simple. Today we are a country of 140 crores. आज हमारा देश 140 करोड़ हमारे देश की पॉपुलेशन है, और आप समझ सकते हैं कि इतना बड़ा देश और उस देश की जो बैंकिंग है, उसकी डाटा माइनिंग है, उसकी इंफॉर्मेशन रिकॉर्डिंग है, उसकी ब्यूरोक्रेसी है, उसके जो सिस्टम्स हैं, प्रोसेसेस हैं, ट्रेबल है, सारे के सारे को अगर मैनुअली मैनेज करना हो, रेवेन्यू रिकॉर्डिंग सिस्टम है, लैंड रिकॉर्डिंग सिस्टम है, अगर उस सबको मैनुअली अगर करने जाएं तो आप समझ सकते हैं इट इज़ गोइंग टू बी नेक्स्ट टू इम्पॉसिबल टू मैनेज अ कंट्री ऑफ 140 करोड़ a population. And therefore what is absolutely important is the digitization. Is the digitization. Everything has to be digitized in a way so that things become faster and there is least and minimal possible intervention as far as the humans are concerned, because ultimately if we bring humans into the system, the whole system is going to slow down, and that is going to create anarchy in the whole system, in the whole economy, in the whole country. That is the significance of the startup entity ecosystem. So all the startup entities using the technology are trying to make system work faster. And you can imagine the passport issuance, if it is to be done for 140 crore people, if the driving license are to be done for 140 crore people, if the banking is to be done for 150 crore people, if insurance is to be done for 140 crore people, with the help of manual intervention, you can imagine it is going to be just impossible. And that is the significance of the startup entity ecosystem. And in my understanding, what we have seen so far is just a tip of the iceberg. The need of the startup entity ecosystem in this country, I suppose, is even 100 times more than what it has been today so far. So that is the significance of the startup entity ecosystem, because ये पूरे system को, पूरी economy को smoothen करता है, fast करता है, quick करता है, और it is only because of the technology, because of the startup ecosystem that things would be faster to happen in this country. As we have experienced in about last 8-10 years, हमने देखा कि पिछले 8 सालों में जो हमारी जो सिस्टम है, जो processes हैं at different levels, at the government level, at the banking level, insurance level, college level, school level, education level, everywhere, things have become faster, and that is primarily because of the startup entity ecosystem, and that is the significance of startup ecosystem for the entire economy. So what are the types of startup? Our focus in this session, friends, is on valuation. And from the perspective of valuation, the types of startup can be put into two categories. Number one, the startup which are pre-revenue, and number two, the startups which are post-revenue. In simple words, वो startup जो कि अभी शुरू हुए हैं और जिन्होंने revenue generate करना शुरू नहीं किया है, which are still at the bootstrapping stage, and who are just consuming money, but they are not generating any revenue, that are not earning any revenue. So that is one category of the startup that we have. And the second category of the startup that we have from the perspective of valuation are those startups who are well established now and they are already generating revenue. So these are the two types of startup from the perspective of valuation that we all need to understand and be aware of. Some of the prominent startups in India. Here are few examples, but remember the list that I'm sharing with you is only an indicative one. This list is not exhaustive one. It's not that it covers all the startups that we have in this country. As a matter of fact, many of these startups may not really be there at the moment in the public domain or public eye, but they are there, they are working, and they are contributing to the economy. So these, friends, as you can see, are some of the prominent startup. Some of them are making profits, some of them are still making losses, and a question which always all of us are asked as the valuation professional as to how is that the loss making companies still get positive valuations, how is that the loss making companies still get funding and financing from different sources. We all understand as to why is that so, but for the moment let's understand these are some of the prominent startups in India: Flipkart, Make My Trip, Jeevan Sathi, Naukri.com, Big Basket, Paytm, Fresh Work, Uber Eat, Grofar, Ola Care, Delivery, Lenskart, Urban Ladder, Redbus, Abixcash, Spotify, MovieQuick, Misho, so many of them. And many of them, friends, are already a unicorn, and some of them are in the process of becoming a decacorn. Now, as we all know, there are certain peculiarities of these startup entities that we have to face as the valuation professional. So what are the peculiarities of these startup entities world over? So it's not only that this is applicable to the startup entities in India. As a matter of fact, this is what is applicable universally. So any startup anywhere, any part of the world will have these kind of peculiarities. So what these peculiarities are: number one, obviously the startup entities that we are talking about, more so the ones which are still at the non-revenue generating stage, they have no history of any kind, no history of operations. As a matter of fact, even the promoters do not have any history. More often than not, these promoters are first generation promoter. They are more often than not, they are technocrats. They have no understanding of finance, and they have no past record of setting up a business, running a business, making run it profitably. So nothing of that sort. Number two, small or no revenues, more operating losses, and that is what is the peculiarities in case of startup enterprises in most of the cases. तो उनके पास में कोई या तो रेवेन्यू नहीं है या बहुत कम है, and to top it further, they are making operating losses. So at EBIT level, they are making losses. They are dependent on private equity and the outsiders equity. So the startup, as we all understand, are the technocrats. They are not business people. They understand the technology, they have the expertise in the technology, but they do not have obviously financial background, or they do not have the business background, and therefore they are prominently dependent on the private equity, or they are dependent on the equity from the outsiders. Many of don't survive. The history shows, the record shows, the experience shows that 90% of the startup entities do not survive. Only 10% of them survive. And one of the reason as to why 90% of the startup enterprises fail to survive, and that is because they do not get proper guidance at the appropriate time. They do not understand finance, and they do not get good guidance on the finance to help them navigate the process of running the operations and managing their finances. As a result of that, 90% of the startup enterprises fail to survive, which unfortunately is a sad story. And I would feel that all of us as the valuation professionals have a very big role to play in ensuring that this percentage of 90% should reduce as much as possible, because we all as the finance professionals, valuation professional, will be in a position to guide the startup enterprise in managing their finances well, in a way so that their business idea germinates, not only germinates, but it also becomes very strong and profitable and running. इन्वेस्टमेंट्स इन स्टार्टअप आर इलिक्विड, वी ऑल अंडरस्टैंड. सो शुरू में जो भी लोग पैसा लगाते हैं स्टार्टअप एंटरप्राइजेज में, तो वो इलिक्विड हैं. इलिक्विड होने का कारण ये है कि जब शुरू में जब पैसा लगाते हैं तो उस समय उस स्टार्टअप के फ्यूचर का कोई भरोसा नहीं है, तो ऑब्वियसली कोई उस इन्वेस्टमेंट को परचेज करना नहीं चाहेगा. प्लस दीज आर unlisted for a very long time. So since they are unlisted for a very long time, and nobody will be interested in them until and unless they start making profit. So the another peculiarities is that investments in startups are illiquid. Entrepreneurs with an idea worth $1 billion एंड टू मच ऑफ एंथुसियाज्म. सो इनवेरिएबली आप देखेंगे कि जितने भी स्टार्टअप हैं, उनके जो प्रमोटर हैं, उनको लगता है कि उनका जो प्रोडक्ट आइडिया है, उनका जो कंसेप्ट है, उनके पास में जो टेक्नोलॉजी है, उनके पास में जो आइडिया है, वो $1 बिलियन का है. एवरीबडी थिंक्स दैट द आइडिया दैट दे हैव इज अ यूनिकॉर्न आइडिया. May not be the case in many of the cases, and plus they are full of over enthusiasm, so which of course can be understood, because more often than not they are young in age and also in experience, so that of course is possible. Only concept, nothing else is not known. तो जो एंटरप्रेन्योर है उसके दिमाग में है कि मुझे ये प्रोडक्ट बनाना है और ये प्रोडक्ट से इस समस्या का समाधान निकलेगा और इस समस्या का सॉल्यूशन निकलेगा, और इसकी वजह से ये मेरा प्रोडक्ट इतना ज़्यादा बिकेगा. कितना बिकेगा, कौन लेगा, क्यों लेगा, किस प्राइस पे लेगा, क्या कॉस्ट होगी, ही डज नॉट हैव एनी आइडिया अबाउट इट, बट ही थिंक्स दैट हिज प्रोडक्ट इज गोइंग टू बी सोल्ड लाइक अ हॉट केक, एंड दैट इज हाउ इट इज़. नॉट मच इन्फॉर्मेशन अवेलेबल अबाउट मोस्ट ऑफ द थिंग्स ऑफ द स्टार्टअप. तो जो स्टार्टअप है उसके बारे में कुछ भी अवेलेबल नहीं है. प्रोडक्ट क्या है मालूम है, कितनी कॉस्ट होगी कुछ आइडिया नहीं है, क्या उसकी सेलिंग प्राइस होगी कुछ आइडिया नहीं है, क्या उसकी ऑपरेटिंग कॉस्ट होगी कुछ आइडिया नहीं है, क्या उसके लिए इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर बिल्ड करना पड़ेगा कुछ आइडिया नहीं है, क्या उसकी डिमांड होगी कुछ, नथिंग इज अवेलेबल, एंड दैट इज द टिपिकल पिक्युलरिटीज ऑफ अ स्टार्टअप. बट रिमेंबर, इट डज नॉट मीन इट इज अ प्रॉब्लम. It means it is an opportunity. It is an opportunity for every finance professional, because entrepreneur or the technocrat or the startup promoter may not have an idea about it, because he does not understand finance. He does not understand as to how the businesses are run, because he is still new. But you and I, of course, can help him in ensuring that he understands all this. Promoters may not be finance savvy. Promoters may not have any idea about the project cost and the subsequent profitability. उनको टैक्स क्या है ये नहीं मालूम, डेप्रिसिएशन क्या है ये नहीं मालूम, किस तरह से एबिडा क्या है ये नहीं मालूम, एबिडा की क्या इंपॉर्टेंस है ये नहीं मालूम, रिटर्न ऑन इक्विटी क्या है ये नहीं मालूम, लेवरेज क्या है ये नहीं मालूम, लेवरेज की रिस्क क्या है ये नहीं मालूम. कर्जा लिया ये तो मालूम पड़ता है कि पैसा आ जाएगा, पैसा आ गया तो खुश हो गए, लेकिन वो कर्जा वापस भी करना है ये नहीं मालूम, और वापस करना है और वो वापस कहाँ से करेंगे, वो आपके जो बिजनेस से जो प्रॉफिट जनरेट होगा उससे करेंगे ये नहीं मालूम. सो ऑल दिस इज नॉट नॉन, अनफॉर्चुनेटली, to in most of the cases, to the startup entrepreneurs or the startup promoter, and that is where we have a role to play. Promoters are in a tearing hurry, so invariably all these people, they would like things to be done not today but yesterday. At times all yes men are their friends. So more often than not, when you are bubbling with an idea and you don't see anything else, you just see that as to how to implement it. तो ऐसे केस में ये भी देखा गया है कि ऐसे एंटरप्रेन्योर्स के लिए, स्टार्टअप्स के लिए, अगर कोई इनको गाइड भी करे और उनको बताए कि देखिए ऐसे नहीं ऐसा करिए, तो उनको लगता है कि ये इस आदमी को कुछ मालूम नहीं है और ये मुझे ज़्यादा मालूम है, विच ऑफ कोर्स बिकम्स अ बिग सेटबैक फॉर द एंटरप्रेन्योर. नो ट्रैक रिकॉर्ड ऑफ परफॉर्मेंस, नॉर एनी predictable cash flow. For all these challenges, friends, that we have discussed, valuation becomes a big problem. For all the problems that we see here, the valuation becomes a huge problem. But let me tell you, at the same time, whatever it may be, still the DCF method is the best method for doing valuation of a startup. It doesn't really matter as to what is the stage at which the startup may be. Valuation discounted cash flow method can still be used, can still be applied. Information may not be available for the purpose of doing the DCF valuation. Just because information is not available, that cannot be the reason for not using the discounted cash flow method. On the contrary, if the information is not available, we finance professionals, valuation professionals understand finance. The entrepreneur understands the technology, so we can complement our understanding of finance, our understanding of valuation with the knowledge of technology of the entrepreneur, and this is how we can create the information which is required for the purpose of finding out the discounted cash flow method. And remember, what it is ultimately is the question of putting the information in place. So अगर कुछ information नहीं है, क्या मतलब है इसका मतलब ये है कि project cost कितनी है उसकी information नहीं है. अगर project cost कितनी है उसकी information नहीं है, interact with the evaluation, interact with the entrepreneur और उससे बात करिए, उससे चर्चा करिए, explore, talk to him and ask him कि भैया आपको ये बनाना है, तो ये बनाने के लिए आपको कौन कौन से इक्विपमेंट्स लगेंगे, कौन कौन सी प्लांट एंड मशीनरी लगेगी, कितना आपको बिल्डिंग लगेगी, कितना आपको स्पेस लगेगा, कितना आपको लैंड लगेगी, और वो जो भी एसेट्स आप परचेज करोगे उसकी कितनी कॉस्ट होगी. सो ये सब we can help the entrepreneur to come out with all these details, and then we can also discuss with him and tell him कि भाई आप जो भी बनाओगे उसकी क्या selling price होगी, और selling price whatever he may say, we can help him कि अगर आप इसकी price XYZ रखना चाहते हो, is the customer really going to feel कि ये XYZ price जो आप रख रहे हो it is good for him, and we can help him that if you price it high nobody is going to buy it, and if you price it low appropriately then people will buy it. उसकी क्या ऑपरेटिंग कॉस्ट होगी, अगर वो मैन्युफैक्चरिंग में है तो उसकी मटेरियल कॉस्ट क्या होगी, अगर वो सर्विस में है तो उसकी SG&A कॉस्ट क्या होगी. दिस इज हाउ वी एज द वैल्यूएशन प्रोफेशनल एंड द फाइनेंस प्रोफेशनल्स कैन हेल्प also to find out as to what his costs are going to be. And this is how, friends, we can help him prepare his cash flow for next 5, 10, 20 years, and based on that cash flow of 5, 10, 20 years, by using an appropriate cost of capital, we would be able to help him come out with a valuation which is more authentic, which is more based on the numbers, rather than doing a valuation which is based on how many clicks you are getting on your portal, or how many people are coming and what footfall that you have. All those steps, remember, are very fallacious, and they will put the entrepreneur or the startup entity in a big trouble. Remember, the fundamental is, what is value? Value is money, right? Value, as I said in the beginning, what is value? Value is converting utility of an asset in terms of money. That is what is the value, and that is what is the valuation. So that is what we have to remember and help the startup enterprise. I am facing little challenge because I am not able to, because of this annotation, I am not able to move my cursor. So
so you can close it and start.
Yeah, I think that is what I will need to do. So no worries, I will do it. Okay. Yeah, sometimes these technologies becomes a challenge. I'm not able to move my cursor at all. So let's see. I hope I have this window in front of me. So mm,
So just sleep your system, then start again. It will start
yeah, I
sometime
think I'll do
if you are
that.
trying the system. Yeah.
Yeah, but then what is happening is uh, it's not accepting any command. So my screen is
So what?
frozen.
So press Alt F4.
Okay, press Alt
Alt F4.
F4. Okay, I
It will
did
just
that.
shut down sleep.
No, no, it did not work.
You have function key, then F and